Have you ever been backstabbed by a friend? Story 1. I made plans to go see a movie with my friends for my 16th birthday and planned it weeks in advance. Everyone bailed the day before or of, but I decided to still go see the movie. I ran into my whole group of friends leaving the movie theater while buying popcorn. That's brutal. Did you confront them? Yeah, a lot of hemming and hawing with no real explanation and no apology. I still went to see my movie Underworld and learned a valuable lesson about people and friends. It sucked at the time, but eventually that lesson was a great B-Day gift. I can't believe they bailed on you just to go still see the movie without you, but close enough to the same time that you ran into them. Not only were they crappy friends, they weren't very bright. Story 2. We had been very good friends for over 2 years. Their roommate moved out and they asked me if I wanted to move into their spare room. I was very happy to live with my good friends and I did everything I could to be the best roommate possible. After 3 weeks, they found another source of income and kicked me out. First, they offered to help me find another accommodation, but the next day they changed their mind and just told me to leave by the end of the month. It was 7 days until the end of the month. They haven't spoken to me ever since. When we met somewhere in town, they acted like they had never seen me before. I have no idea what I did wrong. Nothing. You did nothing wrong. They did do something wrong, being that person's friend. Even if they did have legitimate reasons for kicking you out, it was very wrong of them to only give you a week to find a new place, and then ghost you afterwards. It's hard to believe you did nothing to deserve being kicked out, but maybe your friends really were that cruel, and in that case, you're better off having lost them. Story 3. I had a best friend that I knew for 16 years. She got pregnant and her parents tried to kick her out. They wanted her to get a termination, but she refused. One of our high school friends told me someone should push her down a flight of stairs so that she can miscarry. I told her that's a very bad idea and defended my best friend. The next day, the principal came by to my class to ask me if I could attend a meeting about something important. If I didn't attend, I was going to be expelled. When I arrived at the meeting, our shared friend claimed I was going to shove my best friend down flights of stairs so that she could miscarry. My best friend believed her. We stopped talking after that. I can't fathom why your former shared friend would even go to such lengths. Was she afraid that after having said that, you would expose her? I think she was jealous of our close friendship. My former best friend and I had known each other since we were in diapers. Our shared friend only knew us for maybe 2 years. The whole situation is awful. From what your mutual friend said, to your best friend believing you said it, I'm sorry you lost 2 friends because of the hatred of one. Story 4. My husband and I had a friend that we helped get back on his feet. We paid off some tickets he had, got his license reinstated, hooked him up with a solid connection for a reasonable well-running car to replace his beater, and gave him a place to live and a job in automotive repair. He decided it was a better choice to tell all of our customers we were overcharging them. We weren't, and he'd do the jobs cheaper if they'd bring it to him at his house. This was a short time after he moved out of our house, after never repaying anything he owed us. Not that we asked. It broke my heart. Some will take as much as they possibly can. He did. Now he stops by occasionally like nothing ever happened. It's been years now, but some stuff doesn't heal right. Story 5. My wife said she needed some time for herself, so she went to stay at her mom's for a while. One day, I went to pick up my kids and walked in on her and my best friend in bed together. Turns out it had been going on for a while, and she knew him before she knew me, which I had no clue about. But did it all work out then? Yep, I went through some hard times, but I've been remarried for 10 plus years now. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. The kids are almost out of high school now, and to be honest, they like their stepmom, my wife, more than they like their actual mom. Betrayed by both your wife and best friend. Brutal. I'm glad it worked out for you in the end though. Story 6. Years ago, when I did a health sciences undergraduate degree, most of the cohort was determined to get into medical school. Our medical school program mainly accepted students from only our competitive undergraduate course, due to subject prerequisites. We all knew each other and were friendly, hanging out together and forming study groups. Many of my friends were great. We shared tips and resources and practiced exams and interviews together. But there were a handful who really wanted to get into medical school, and since the program ranks applicants mainly based on undergraduate results, the better your friends perform, the lower your ranking is for selection. So near application time, some of us would head off to the university library to check out textbooks and find chapters or page numbers that the lecturer mentioned would be on the exam, and they would be ripped out. You'd go and find another library copy of the textbook, and that page would be ripped out too. All of them, totally removed in a hurry. I didn't believe that someone from our cohort did it until interview practice began. Students began obtaining copies of the questions from previous years and lying when others asked if they had it. I saw someone give a terrible, awful interview answer, and the other student would give them glowing feedback and inform them they should say that word for word during the interview. It was a wild show, and a lot of relationships fell apart or were never the same again. This is honestly why I'm so glad to have finished my undergraduate degree. Pre-med culture is terrible. It's ridiculously competitive and passive-aggressive, qualities I wouldn't want from any doctor. Glad now to be taking a few years to gain experience before applying to med schools, and people whose interests are less inward-driven. I hate to tell you this, but this sort of backstabby culture does not end in undergrad. You will have those exact same people clawing each other down for rank trying to specialize once you get into school. Just ignore it and do your own thing. Story 7. In 2014, I woke up January 1st in horrible pain. I ended up needing an emergency surgery to remove my gallbladder. I was a single mom to 2 kids under 5 and had just moved back to my hometown after living out of state. We had to leave a really crappy living situation, had only been back about a month, and I had not found a job at that point. I had a really close family friend who was living with me before I moved back, and he ended up homeless, so I bought him an $80 bus ticket, got him back to our hometown, and let him stay with me a few days. He quickly found another place to stay, but we invited him to my youngest son's 2nd birthday, which is the 6th of January. I was like 4 days out from surgery at this point and could barely make it down my stairs, so he offered to go and pick up the pizza and cake for me. We didn't plan a huge party or anything. I was on food stamps and had cash assistance since my son's dad was not involved at all and did not pay child support. Even so, I offered him to get a small pizza to take back to the girl he was staying with, since she and her kids couldn't make it over. The party goes great. Everyone has a good time, especially both of my kids. A few days later, my grandma was going grocery shopping for me, so I went to get my card and realized it's not there. I never got it back from the guy, and I forgot he even had it since I was all doped up on pain meds from surgery. I tried calling him like 5 times and he didn't answer, so I logged into my account online to check my balance and he had taken everything. I had like $600 in cash and then like $750 in food stamps. All of it was gone. He let the girl he was staying with convince him to steal my money from me. I'd only used the money to buy the bus ticket and the pizza and the cake for my son since I'd been in the hospital for the first 4 days of the year and only home for 2 after that. It is still to this day the most intentionally messed up thing anyone has ever done to me, mostly because it was such a huge screw you to my kids. Like, who steals from a single mom recovering from a life-saving surgery on her kid's birthday, especially after I helped him? Like, holy crap. I'm guessing drugs were part of the equation? Addiction really messes people up. I think it for sure had a role. He had an issue with drugs for a while and the girl was worse. Thankfully, he's trying to turn his life around now, and last I heard he's been sober for a little over a month now. Story 8. I grew up going to the same church and met my friend and her family when I was 14. We grew up together, hung out, and our families would be together all the time. Fast forward many years and I'm dating a guy that I fell in love with for almost 3 years at the time. He went to North Dakota to the oil fields for work. I went to visit him and could tell something was a bit off. I took the train from my town to Williston 22 hours to get there. I visited him for 5 days, and on the last day he got up and went to shower. I grabbed his phone. We had an open policy with each other that we could be on each other's phones. I found emails between my friend and him. My family still hangs out with her family and her. I refuse to be around or speak to her. What were they talking about in the emails? Did they ever meet up and sneak around you? What made you think something was up? I'm really sorry, I have been cheated on and I hate the feeling. I will never do that to another person. It was years ago, but I remember some of it was bashing me. Listen, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm pretty cool. I rode on a train 22 hours to see him, cooked for him, cleaned for him, helped him start a business and run it. We had a car, home, and dog together. We had started a solid life over those 3 years before he went to ND. I am totally the first person to own my faults, and I know I'm not perfect. But damn, he openly flirted and talked about getting together with her. They knew each other because we were all friends at one point. Before he left, I know they didn't meet up. The way he treated me, I don't know how to explain it, but he just didn't seem excited to see me anymore. He would keep his phone close. It was his entire vibe and my gut instinct that tipped me off. That must have been a painful discovery, but at least it saved you from continuing to plan a life with someone who didn't really love you. Story 9. I told a friend a secret in high school. I suffer from major depression and social anxiety. Don't tell anyone I'm seeing a therapist. That took a lot for me to say. I was making progress. The friend proceeded to tell the entire class. People thought I was crazy. That's high school for you. I stopped being friends with the few friends I had. I was more alone. I graduated high school with 0 friends. Thanks. Don't worry though, in college I blossomed into a bearded man with no fears. Life has been swell ever since. Yeah, high school was a crap show for me too. Just a whole lot of terrible people, backstabbing and pettiness. So many of these stories are from high school BS. It's not at all surprising. Story 10. My best friend and I worked together for 3 years at a restaurant. I was the night manager and was really cool with all of the employees, but especially her. We hung out outside of work all the time. She went with me to the beach and carnivals with my kids, who adored her. She started dating this guy at work who was slowly becoming a drug addict. I could see it. My crackhead aunt made it easy to spot, but no one else could. After he messed up for the 10th time in a week and started nodding out at the sink, he was fired by my boss on a Saturday. The following Monday night at closing time, he came in the back door wearing a ski mask. I was walking towards the front door to lock it when I was grabbed from behind and felt something cold against my neck. It took me a second to realize it was a knife. He said, "Get me the money," but I couldn't move. I was literally paralyzed with fear. My brain was screaming at me to move towards the register, but my feet just wouldn't move. He screamed, "Give me the money!" again, but I was frozen. He then dragged me to the register, made me open it and grabbed a fistful of 20s and ran out the back. Where was my best friend at the time this whole thing went down? Conveniently, in the bathroom. I was still in shock trying to explain to the police on the phone what had just happened. When I hung up the phone, she asked what happened and I told her I'd just been robbed at knife point. Her exact response was, "I hope no one thinks I had anything to do with this." What? So long story short, they find the guy, I told them I recognized his voice, and he rats her out on the setup. The setup was her texting him an all clear when only she and I were in the building. She quit the next day and stopped replying to my texts. When I found out, I was heartbroken. This is someone who was around my kids regularly. I was diagnosed with extreme anxiety and PTSD after being robbed and still have flashbacks randomly. If someone comes up behind me and startles me, I panic. The amount of money my life was worth to them? $440. The punishment they received? He got 2 years in jail, 50 years suspension, and 1 year of probation. She got 1 year probation. I had to quit the job I had over for a decade because I couldn't stand being in there anymore. That must have been so horrible. I hope you're doing better now. That's an awful thing to do, and I hope you find or found the proper help to deal with it. Thank you. I'm doing much better now. I went to therapy for a while, but I felt like I was getting worse talking about it over and over again. I still have bad days and nightmares occasionally, but I am slowly healing. Thank you for your kind words. Story 11. This all started out poorly by me following my boyfriend to the same college he went to. He was a year older. I still don't regret it after all, as I loved my school and everything else about those 4 years. My boyfriend and I were off again on again the first semester I was there. Red flag. The new girl across the hall in my dorm became my best friend. She and my boyfriend didn't really like each other, but it wasn't a huge deal. Just a personality clash, and she didn't like how he treated me with the on/off crap. Our school had a winter term in January. My boyfriend lived off campus, so he was there and my best friend was taking a class. I was home. My best friend was lonely and didn't know many other people on campus for winter term, so I told her to hang out with the boys in my boyfriend's frat house, whom she was friendly-ish with. So they all started hanging out, and by that, of course, I mean they started hooking up. I get back to school and I immediately can tell things are weird with my best friend. Unbeknownst to me at the time, my boyfriend had basically our entire relationship to practice covering his tracks and was a smooth and practiced liar at this point. Within a couple of weeks, it all came out that they had been hooking up and my best friend actually tells me, "You know how much I've wanted a boyfriend. If you were a good friend, you'd have let me have him." Why I still wanted to date him at this point is beyond many people's comprehension, including mine, but it did involve a dog that I was beyond attached to. I do fault them both equally, and did at the time too. I don't remember being mad at either of them as much as I was just devastated. He was apologetic from the start. She was mean and manipulative. It totally sucked, and I felt so betrayed by both of them. Unsurprisingly, I have a lot of trust issues and loyalty issues since. I had a best friend pull that with me too. She made me feel guilty for being upset at her because she never had a guy interested in her before, and that she was so sorry for crossing a line with my fiance. She was incredibly manipulative, and he was really good at seeming sincere when he apologized, telling me it would never happen again. Spoiler alert, it did happen again, many times. I even walked in on them together on Christmas Eve. I eventually cut them both off, even though it took longer to cut him out than it should have. So sorry you had to go through with that too. What is wrong with people? I hope you are stronger now. It took me a long time to become a stronger person. I always figured he would grow up eventually, and we were so good together otherwise. They never do. I don't know who's worse in this story, the boyfriend or the best friend. What I do know is, you are way better off without either of them. Story 12. I had a friend from high school until about 4 years ago. We were friends for about 8 to 9 years total. He was a very close friend, and one day confided in my boyfriend, now husband, and I that his roommate was moving out to live with his girlfriend and he couldn't make rent that month. My boyfriend and I had an apartment lease ending, so we decided that we could be of help and moved in 2 months before our lease was up. 2 rent payments. We lived there for about 2 months when we found out that we were pregnant, and this was a happy scenario as our roommate had informed us he wished to turn over the lease to the house to us to move back in with his parents. It was a perfect 3-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms and plenty of space. The day before we were set to meet up with the landlord, we came home to an eviction notice on the door, and all of the roommate's stuff was moved out. We called him, no answer. We called the number on the eviction notice from the landlord and found out he lied and never told the landlord anything. He wouldn't even work with us at all. He just said we had 30 days to get out. Our roommate had been pocketing our rent money for months. We had 30 days to unexpectedly find a new place, pay first and last month's rent and a security deposit, and move in the middle of Michigan winter while pregnant. Wow, if you had receipts and the landlord to at least back you up, that's gotta be grand larceny. What a tremendous jerk. And screw the landlord for not working with you guys after the fact. He had new and responsible tenants right there. He could have just added what was owed little by little onto the new rent or something. But seriously, screw that guy. If you had receipts to back yourselves up, I'd sue the ever-living crap out of him and put that money away for the kiddo. I hope you guys and the kiddo are all happy and healthy. We are all much better now. It's been about 4 years. We just took the L and moved on. We lived in a rental house for a year and a half that was way smaller, but we made it work and bought our house that we live in now about 2.5 years ago. 2 kids, 2 cats, 1 dog, and our current friends are wonderful people. Story 13. I had a college roommate who was a high school best friend. He was sometimes a jerk, particularly when he was drunk. One night, we had both been drinking. I'm not exactly sure what he said, but he left the room and apparently went and peed on my bed. He then left the room and went to a mutual friend's dorm. I went and washed my sheets and flipped my mattress over, then poured a bunch of water all over his bed and put a nice looking lump of peanut butter on his pillow. I couldn't bring myself to actually pee or crap on his stuff. Then I went to our friend's place where folks were hanging out. He had this sly look on his face when I came in, and he made a comment about peeing on my bed. I told him that he was dumb for doing that and then leaving the dorm with his room unlocked. The look on his face flipped in a second and he ran out of there. I had locked my door, so I had a good laugh about it and brushed it off. When I went back to my room later, I discovered that he had gotten into my room. I later found out that he had gone to an RA, told them he lived in my room and was locked out, and they unlocked my door for him and left him alone. WTF? He peed on my bed again, peed on my cell phone, peed on my computer, and peed in my bottle of prescription Adderall. He caused hundreds of dollars of damage, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that while I was dealing with the fallout, he was hanging out with our mutual friends and a group of girls that we were all friendly with. I don't know what he told them, but none of them would even speak speak to me afterward. They wouldn't even tell me why they weren't speaking to me. He decided that he was just going to ignore me and our mutual friend/roommate and pretend we didn't exist for the rest of the year. He poisoned my relationships with high school friends and new college friends, and after an evening in which he did the most vile stuff I've ever experienced, and I couldn't even bring myself to pee on his bed. He had reached out to me over the 15 years or so since then. In big groups I can be polite, but this is the only person I have ever not been able to forgive. To rub salt in the wound, he is still friends with a girl I was crushing on at the time and who I know had been attracted to me as well. She was a part of the group that never spoke to me again, and it has to be because of a lie he told her. Also, he continued to leverage the relationship he had developed with a relative of mine who was kind of a big deal at the university and in the town. My relative would tell us to get together and work things out, and I would say I can't do that and ask him to cut off contact. He thought we were just in a spat or something and kept trying to be a mediator, while continuing to help my friend and get him into programs at the school and jobs afterwards. Stopping here because this is long, but obviously this has opened the wound for me. Story 14. This was not a friend, but a sister. I had this enormous crush on this guy. I was too shy to talk to him and just adored him from afar. My sister says, be his secret admirer. That way he can get to know you. For a month, I put notes and cards on his car a few times a week. One weekend, Sis and I go out and I see him. I point him out and tell her that's the guy I'm in love with. She tells me she's going to go talk to him about me and get us hooked up. I wait for 30 minutes and she doesn't return. I go inside the restaurant that they are in and turn a corner to find her making out with him. That was a devastating blow. Are you cool with her now? Did she ever betray you again? We don't speak. Haven't in 10 years. Yes, she betrayed me after that and still does when she gets a chance. There is something so much worse about being backstabbed by a sibling. Your sister sounds like a real piece of work. I probably would have cut her off too. Story 15. Several years ago, I moved to Florida. Almost immediately after I met a friend, he was a great guy, so I thought, and we'd constantly hang out. He would show me around the town and state, etc. About a year and a half of knowing him, he stole a couple of my credit cards and racked up really big bills. Unfortunately for me, and I know this now but didn't then, I simply thought calling the credit card company to report your card stolen and canceling the account also vacated the charges. That's not true. You actually have to formally contest the charges separately, and you only have 60 days. By the time I realized this, it was too late. I tried in vain to semi-reconcile with him to try to get a payment plan. He begged me not to call the police. I regret now that I didn't. I did believe that he had fallen on hard times and he would get back on his feet and try to repay me. That didn't happen. Although, later on, he did get arrested for something else and was put on probation. I figured that would have been the best time to try to recoup the money lost. I had fallen behind on these payments and my credit was starting to suffer. I had to drop out of college because of it. I did try instead to take him to small claims court. I do realize that civil court is not criminal, but with him now being a convicted felon, I might stand a better chance at looking much better. When we got to court, he denied everything, said everything was a gift, and completely slandered me in open court. Why he was allowed to get away with it is beyond me, but that case was dismissed. I got nothing. My credit suffered for years because of that. I eventually did save up enough money to file for bankruptcy to just get rid of that debt that I couldn't repay, nor should I have had to. I have never really forgiven him for what he did to me. As far as I know, he still lives around, but luckily I haven't seen him in several years. I don't know what I'd even say if I ever did encounter him. The bankruptcy did eliminate that debt, so I cannot and will not ever say he owes me anything monetarily, but he owes me a huge apology. But like I said, I would seriously doubt the sincerity of it and likely wouldn't accept it anyways. I think the best is as it is now. He just stays away from me. You're a very kind person. That guy owes you more than an apology. He caused you a ton of suffering and misery. Plus, he used your friendship for monetary gain and lied to you a lot. I hope that if he contacts you, you do not reply. He's a POS. He always will be, and he'll always be looking for an angle with you. Story 16. At the beginning of the summer before high school, my two friends and I were left alone at my buddy's house. We snuck into his parents' liquor cabinet and all tasted some vodka. Being that it was my first time tasting hard liquor, I took one sip and instantly disliked it. I decided not to drink anymore because it was gross. One of my friends started pounding shots even though it was his first time drinking. He had maybe 4 shots and started feeling tipsy. We proceeded to marvel at his drunken self for the rest of the night. Fast forward 2 weeks and I'm riding in the car with my mom. She begins to ask me if I have anything I want to tell her, and like any 13-year-old in my position, I said no. She then goes on a rant about how disappointed she is in me for drinking alcohol at my friend's house, and proceeds to ground me for basically the entire summer. Come to find out, my friend who got drunk started feeling guilty and told his mom what he did. He was a spoiled kid and his mom didn't punish him, while I, on the other hand, got grounded for taking one sip. Strict parents, man. If he wanted to rid himself of the guilt, that's his prerogative. But then why narc on you as well? Because the spoiled little rich kid certainly wouldn't do anything bad if not for the influence of his friend. This reminds me of when I was 12 and my friend told his mom about my secret copy of GTA San Andreas. He was trying to convince her to buy him the game, and when she refused, he told her that my mom allowed me to play it. Upon calling my mother to confirm this fact, she found out that my mom most definitely did not let me play the game, and I got in trouble. We're still friends, but I occasionally like to remind him of that one time he sold me out and still didn't get what he wanted. Story 17. I remember I got a holographic Charizard when I was a kid, and I was so excited to show it off at school the next day. Then about halfway through the day, it goes missing. I looked everywhere and I could not find it and was super bummed out. The very next day, this kid named Marcelo, who I thought was a friend, shows up with his own Charizard. I couldn't prove it was mine, but I knew in my heart that it was. The timing was just too convenient, that I lost mine and then he gets one. People like Marcelo were why we weren't allowed to bring Pokemon cards to school. Story 18. I had some friends who lived on my street. They were literally the best friends I ever had at the time. We were playing footy in the park and my friend fell over. His phone screen was smashed. It was an old school Walkman phone. This was 10 years ago. Anyways, he said I should pay for it. I was like, no way, man. If you play footy with a phone in your pocket and it gets broken, that's your fault. Next thing I know, all my friends turned against me and alienated me in the village I lived in. I got really depressed because my best friend from school, who I'm still best friends with now, lived 45 minutes away. Next thing I knew, pizzas were being delivered and the police were being called to my house by all these restaurants. Then I started getting stones thrown at my house. My dad's BMW got vandalized and other stupid stuff like my phone getting random calls from numbers I didn't know threatening violence. It turns out the phone was smashed before the game of football, and he thought my parents would just replace it. When I said no, they decided they didn't much care for me and wanted to see how far they could get with terrorizing my family. It got dealt with though, and I was the best man at my friend's wedding this year, and he and my other best friend have each other's back 100%. Those jerks tried to set you up. Did you have to pay for the pizzas? Did they get in trouble? Were you a rich kid to them? Nah, they just kicked off and took them back. And not particularly, we were all of the same sort of stature, working middle class. It was resolved in a good old-fashioned parents' chat. Story 19. My best friend stopped talking to me after my dad died, and took the whole friend group with him. Apparently, I was too emotional. I was 13. Having my entire friend group walk away from me when I was in such a crappy place stuck with me forever. There's nothing like a tragedy to show you who your real friends are. It sucks, but in the long run, it's good to know. I'm so sorry that you went through that, OP. Thank you so much for watching and/or listening all the way to the end. If you have a similar story that you would like to share, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed these stories, please leave us a like and subscribe if you haven't yet. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time!